So we have created Visualforce pages, which are like custom user interfaces, custom UI that we have been creating, right? And for doing that, so far we are just dealing with the standard controller. All right. I'll talk about other type of controller also, but that's something which we will talk a little later. Then get into the custom controller right now. Um, okay. So primarily, so far the user interfaces that we are creating are for displaying the data. So, if I go back to the examples that we did yesterday, you would see that most of them, or in fact, all of them are for displaying the data. If I go into this example, uh, V4, so this is more or less displaying the data, right? First name, last name, this, that. If I go to the other page, this page is also for displaying the data. If I go to V7, we created this page also for displaying the data, right? So we are not interacting with the page. It's like, just the page displays the data. So far we have just learned how to create pages where you can display the data to the end user. What if I want to allow the end user to make some changes in that data, or maybe enter the data into the database, right? So far it's just a one-way communication. The data from the database, the data is being displayed on the page and the end user can view it. Now I want to create pages which allow me to enter the data myself or edit the data, right? So for doing that, we will use one more component which is called an apex form component, right? So we'll learn about apex form component and how we can use it and what sort of other components we can use with it, right? That's what we are going to do today. So first of all, let's start with a very basic kind of an example where I just display data from a few fields and I make them editable. Okay, so start with a page. Um, use the standard controller account as we did earlier. Okay. Text page block. Put a title to it. Display data. And I'll display a few fields of data here. Let's say that name. Account.name. Right. So just created a simple page which will display these 5 fields from an account. Let me fetch the ID of the account. Taken this ID, question mark ID equals. Okay. Right. So as I told you, this page is only allowing me to display the data. All right. On the page, I am not able to edit it. I'm not able to do anything. Right. Now, how do I edit this? So let me create one more page block here, just below this, which allows me to edit the data from my side. So in that case, you'll use one more component. First of all, let's create a page block and then we'll see. Edit data. call it whatever you want. And there's a component called input field component. This input field component basically allows you to be able to edit the data. Got it? So it has an attribute which is called value, and value can be a field name. So you can reference to a field in the value, like account dot name. So instead of using that formula directly, which ends up showing me a read-only data on the screen, on the page, what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to use a component called input field. All right, input field component allows us to input the data, and it has an attribute where you reference the value of the field, which field you want to input data into. So you just make it account.name in this case, save it. Okay. When you try to use input field component, it will give you this error. It will say that you must use this component within an apex form component. I was talking about this, right? So anytime you want some action from the user of the page, you have to include those components inside the form component. All right, anything which requires the end user action, something like the end user is entering the data, or a button that an end user can click, or a link that an end user can click. For all these things, they need to be within an apex form component, right? So all that you have to do is just create a form component and make sure that your input field is within the apex form component. What I try to do is I try to put the form component right after the page component, right? So that anything anywhere in the page which has got to do with the form gets covered inside it, right? So you can have the apex page component, and then you can start the apex form component, and towards the end also you can do the same thing. So anywhere you have an input field or a command button or a link, they all get within the form component. So that's it. Now do you see this? Now it's being displayed as an input field, which means you have an option of making changes here. Got it? So same way, if you let me put it inside a page block section. Collapsible equals false, column equals 1. We discussed why we will make column equals 1, right? So that we just have one column for that page block section. So the moment you put it inside a section, it automatically takes the label of the field also here. Right? That's the reason why I have put it into the page block section. So if you put something inside a page block section, it will automatically take the label of the field also. Right. So I want the type and the industry field, and then the phone and the facts field. So do you see it? So this is one format if you just want to display the data. This is the other format where you can change the data, change the values, right? You want to change the phone number, let's say 1234. You want to change the fax number here, right? So this can be done here on this page. Got it? Clear? Okay, there is a small logic to this. There's one more small logic which I want you to understand here. That when you actually make some changes here, on this, let's say I just changed the phone number here. It was 1000 and I made it 1234. Whatever changes I've made here. Now this is not actually being saved in the database as of now. This is all on the user interface. It's still on this page, right? The changes need to be made in the database also. So though input field is allowing me to make changes, but the changes are still lying on the UI. It's not getting into the database right as of now. So how do we make changes into the database? We need some action for that. Okay. So for action, you can use another component which is called a command button. So there are two components. One is a command button, the other one is a command link. And we can use either of them to perform an action. Apex command button value can be save it now, and action can be saved. Right. So value is what value displays on the button. So once you create the button, what do you want to display? What label you want to display on the button? Okay, that's what value is. So value you can write whatever you want. So while you're using an Apex command button, you can use this component, and value will be whatever text you want to display on the button. That's one. Action is the actual action which you would be performing, right? So this there is this default action called save, because we are still using standard controller, right? So there is this default save action which will save, or all the changes into the database. So I'm going to use this default save action, save the page. So now we have the input field where I can make the changes. Instead of LTD, I want to make it limited, and I can then perform the save operation. Correct? So it will save all the changes to the record. Save it now. See, the record gets saved and the changes have been updated. Now it's limited.
Hey Jeet, quick question.
Mm-hmm.
So the command button component that you created, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that the only way we can show a button?
Yeah. I mean, I'm just trying to understand. Is that the only way we can show a button, or you're saying that is that the only way
So how do
we
you?
can perform a save?
So basically, with the command button component, what are you doing?
Command button component brings you a button, all right, and that button can have an action attribute, a save attribute, or maybe something else. You can perform any action, but right now we just wanted to make the changes into the database, so we did the save.
Got it. If I want to change the size of the button and stuff, can I write attributes to it?
Yeah, we can do everything. So you can have a button designed as per your requirement, or the color and everything. So we will talk about that a little later. The styling and
Okay.
everything can be controlled for whatever components you see here. See, Salesforce by default has uses all the default styling of Salesforce. Like this button looks very similar to the buttons that are used in Salesforce, right? So it all comes with default styling, but in case we want, we can do complete styling from our side. So if you see, almost every component, that's the page. Every component has an option of style, right?
Okay.
So that style is where we can define what is going to be the look and feel of the button. So that's how it is. But we are not talking about
Okay.
the styling part right now. We are just dealing with the standard style. Later on, we will talk about how we can control the styling. Right?
Sure. And if I want to align it to the center or align it to exactly where that is?
Yeah. So for this button, basically there is another component. See, everything we can do using the CSS, so aligning to the center and everything. But there is one more component in Salesforce which allows you to align your buttons, and that's called a page block button. All right. So if you want to control how where your button appears, let me show you before we get into page block button. If you look into a standard Salesforce record or a page, you would see that Salesforce buttons usually appear at the top and at the bottom. So there's a repeat of the same buttons. See this? Right? In case you want that sort of thing, you should use your button inside another component which is called an Apex page block button. Create this component apex page block buttons and put your command button inside this. All right. The moment you do this, it gets repeated and the align to center is automatically happened, right? So it's at the top and bottom. In case you don't want to see it at the top and bottom both, you just want it at the top, then in the page block buttons, you have an option of location. So location, you can just make it top. By default, it brings it at the top and bottom both. You can just say location equals top. Now it appears at top. If you just want it at bottom, you should say location equals bottom. Correct? So that's how it works. Clear on this? Now there's another component, as I told you, command link. Command link and command button are, functionality wise same, just that the look and feel is different. So command link looks more like a link, not more like a link. It looks exactly like a link. So for example, I create apex command link here with all the same features. Value equals save it now, action equals save. See, this is how a command link will look. It will perform same operation. There's no difference in the action, right? Just that a button, command button looks like a button and this looks like a link. So depending on your requirement, whether you want a link or a button, you will just choose it. Got it? And command link also works with this Apex page block buttons component, right? Okay. There's another small thing that I want you to understand here. Let me display some data here first. Okay. Let's say this is my page, the Visualforce page. I make some changes and then I try to click on the save button. Once I click on the save button, the changes will be saved in the database and I will be redirected to the standard page of this record. Standard page of this record for which I have got the record ID here. Save it. Changes are saved. You are redirected to the standard detail page of the record. Got it? So that's what a save action does. Save action saves changes in database, redirects you to standard detail page of record. Okay. What if I just want to save the changes and not go anywhere else? I just want to stay on that same page. Fine. In that case, you will use another action. There's another action which is called quick save. So quick save will basically save the changes in the page, in the database, make the changes in the database and stays on the same page, same Visualforce page. So it will not move away from that Visualforce page, right? So depending on your requirement, again, you'll choose whether you want your users to move to the detail page or you want them to stay on the same Visualforce page after they click on the save button. So let's say I've removed the link part, commented the link part. I'll just create one more button with quick save action, page, command button, value can be save and stay on this page. This is just whatever you want to put here, and action can be quick save. So this is also default action, quick save. So if you try to change something here now, 1599. This is what I mean, right? If I say save and stay on this page, it will make the changes on the database and stay on the same page. It will not go away. How will you understand whether the changes have been saved in the database or not? You can notice it here. Right now it is 1500, right? Updated value is this. So I will just say, see, changes have been saved in the database. That's the reason why this area got updated. And I come back to the same page. All right. So depending on our requirement, we will just choose whether we want to move out of this page and go to the detail page, or we just want to stay on the same page. Right. Okay. So that's one more thing. Now, there are other ways of editing the data. We have used Apex detail component, right? So this is one way you use input field component. That's one thing. There are a few more ways. We'll look into those. So we have used Apex detail component, right? Yesterday we talked about Apex detail component. If I'm using an Apex detail component and I want to use, right, this is where I am able to do it field by field. But if I'm using an Apex detail component and still want the data to be editable on my page, how do I do that? So I don't want to create input fields field by field. I want to use a detail component. Let's say title, I'll get the name of the account to be displayed as title. Okay, let me put the detail component here. Related list equals false and title equals false. And let's get the ID from here. Alright, so this is what a detail component does, right? It brings in all the details of the record. I just don't want to go field by field. What if I want to make, be able to make changes while I'm using the detail component, multiple fields and all, right? And I don't want to actually click on the edit also. Then you have an option which is called an inline edit. For a detail component, there's an attribute which is called inline edit. And you just have, by default it's false, you have to make it true. That's it. That's all that we need to do. See it again, inline edit, make, by default it's false, we'll have to make it true. Okay. Now once the inline edit has been enabled for a detail component, you see you will have an option of editing the record on the page directly. Let's say the annual revenue you want to update, you can just take your mouse there, double click, and you will see that you are able to edit it. Add one more zero and save changes. Correct. So by default it comes. Number of employees. So this inline edit will basically allow you to make your data editable on the page directly without moving into the edit page or something. Any field you want to update, you just have to hello. Yeah, sorry. I lost voice. Okay. So this is where, basically what you can do is you can actually make the changes and then save those changes, right? So this inline edit support will do that. Got it? Questions around that? What an inline edit is doing? All right. So that's second way of doing it. Now, what if I want, 5 or 6 fields? Now, if I go back to the previous example, the problem with my previous example was there was a small challenge with that. The problem is that the data it's being displayed as an input field. Sometimes you don't want the data to be displayed as input field. You want the data to be displayed as a read-only field, and still you want people to be able to edit the data. Got it? They should be able to double click and edit the data. So if you're using a detail component, then it's fine. Then we saw that in the detail component, there is an attribute called inline edit. But if I don't want to use the detail component and still be able to use that kind of a functionality, that the data display is like a read only, and you know still editable. Displays as a read only, but when someone double clicks on it, it becomes editable. For that, all that you have to do is you just have to go and use another component which is called an output field. Let me just do that example now. Standard controller account, fixed page block. Data interface. Okay. Now, if you want to display your data in the in the read-only format, then there is another component which is called output field. You've done input field. Let's see output field. Output field will basically just show the data as an output or a read-only format. Account dot name. Right. Question mark id equals, right. So displays the name of the record as the output value or a read-only value. And there's another component called inline edit support which can be included here. Inline edit support also requires a form component. Got this? So though the data is being displayed as an output field value, it looks like a read only, but when you double click on this, it becomes editable, right? How did we do this? For doing this, you just have to make sure that you use one more component called inline edit support in that particular page block, right? So I created the page block, and then I can create certain output fields here in this page block. Let me create a page block section also so that the labels populate automatically. Columns equals 1, right? And what I can do is I can just copy this, put it here. So okay, one more output field, output field for, let's say, the type. Account dot type. We can have the same thing for phone, fax, Hmm, industry. All right. This is how it is. You have your output fields created, and you can double click on it to edit this. All right. How is it happening? Just try to look into the structure. Inside the page block section, I have all my output field components. All right. And along with those output field components, I've used one more component which is called Apex Inline Edit Support. So if you put Apex Inline Edit Support inside a parent component, here that is a page block section. So if you put it inside a parent component, it by default enables inline edit support for all the other child components in the same parent, under the same parent. Correct. So because I put this in inline edit support inside the Apex page block section, so inline edit support gets enabled for all these components. Got it? Now you can make changes here. So we have different ways of doing the same thing. Depending on your requirement, you will just go and make the user interface. First one that we saw was basically just displaying the input fields right on the page. Second one, that can be a good thing for an edit page if you have a different or a separate edit page. Using input field is an option. If you are working with a detail component, so on the detail component there is an attribute called inline edit which can be used. And if you are working with if you just don't want to use the detail component and still you want to be able to allow your users to edit the data somewhere, then this is the best thing that can be done for that. Correct. Here. Okay, so this is how it works. Now we will move into, if we do not have any questions here, I will move into the next type of controller, the standard list controller, which allows us to display list of records. So we can actually do standard list controller to display list of records. So far we have been dealing with one single record at a time, right? So we always need to supply the ID here, and then only the record for which I've supplied the ID value for that record actually come onto my page. Now the next thing that we will get into is displaying a list of records, not just one record. So if you have any
Hey,
questions down here, please let me know.
can you just give me a minute? I'll be right back. Just 1 minute.
Sure. The difference between the standard controller and the list controller is standard controller page always requires your standard controller page always requires a record ID, and it's a page which can only display one record at a time on the page. So display one record at a time, or primarily understand it that the standard controller page gets connected to one record in the database at one point of time, right? So it's a template which gets connected to one record, and this ID needs to be supplied in the URL always, and it will fetch the values of that record in that page, right? So that's about the standard controller. Now the second thing is the standard list controller. Standard list controller basically works with list of records. Okay, so you don't have to actually deal with the ID in the URL, and you don't have to supply the record ID in the URL as such. All right, all that you have to do is you just have to go ahead and create a page with a standard list controller and define which object list you want to display, and it will do the job for you. For example, uh, let's say accounts. So in my accounts I have all these accounts available, right? All these accounts are available. Now I want to create a page which displays a list of all these accounts, right? Then I'll use a standard list controller. Okay, so for standard list controller, we'll talk about the list controller, and we will also talk about the we'll also talk about one more component which is called an Apex page block table. So we'll learn, because to display list I need to create a table of records, right? A list cannot be displayed the way we were displaying a single record. It requires a table to be created for that, right? So that's what we are going to do now. The next is the standard list controller page that we are going to create. So how do we do that? Let's go ahead and start creating a page. Say apex slash v11. Okay.
Go with 17 or 19.
Okay. It would be good if you try to take some other sequence, maybe maybe VF12, so that we have all the
Yeah,
pages
let's do
of
that.
the
Yeah.
session in one sequence. Right.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. V17 does not have anything, so I'll use this one. All right. So standard list controller page that will display a list is very simple. All that you have to do is you just have to use call the standard controller as we were doing earlier. And along with that, you have one more attribute on the Apex page component, which is called the record set var. You have to call this record set var, and you have to, it stands for record set variable. Okay, so you have to define a variable for the set of records from this object, standard controller object. That's it. And you can call it anything. It's a variable, so you can name it whatever you want. So it's a variable which holds the values of all the records from this object. That's how it is, right? And then we can just say apex page block title, let me call it list of accounts, and then we would say apex page block table. As I told you, we will need to create a table here since we are talking about displaying multiple records. So for apex page block table component, let's understand a few things about apex page block table. Page block table component has two required attributes. One is value, one is var variable. All right. So value is basically the kind of list that you want to display in that particular page. Value is basically the list of records that need to be displayed. Var is one more variable defined for the value, so nickname used for the value. All right. So what I'm trying to do here is, in this apex page block table, what I would do is I would use a value which is this. Basically in this table I want to display these records, right? So my value will be like this, displayed like this, should be equal to record set var. And there is one more attribute here which is called var, which you can call it A or B or whatever. You can give a nickname here. And then you have to just go ahead and define the columns in the table. So in the table, what will we have? We will have columns. So let's say my column value is a dot name. Okay, so this variable stands for this one. So this variable is kind of an alias for this big value that you have given here. All right. And inside the column, when you're trying to fetch a value from the object, you just have to say a dot name, basically variable name dot field name. Then this, so it can be like name, type, industry, and the phone number and the fax number. See, the page is created. Now I don't need to supply the ID here in the URL. Got it? So what we are doing, we just created our Visualforce page. We defined the standard controller equals account. We used one more attribute of the page component, which is called record set var, and I gave it some name, so you can call it whatever you want. Then in the page block where value was required, I called this record set var, record set variable that was defined. I defined one more variable which will be called within the page block itself, and then I've created 5 columns, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and each column I've defined what value I want to put in this column. So each column component is creating the column here, like account name, type, industry, phone, fax. Got it?
Uh, Jeet, can
Mhm.
you talk a little bit more about the record set var attribute?
Just give me 1 minute, huh? One minute. Hello. Yeah. Tell me.
Yeah, Jeet. So, can you tell me a little bit more about the record set var attribute and why we're using it?
Hello. So record set var attribute is basically, hello. Yeah. So this is just a variable that we are defining. All right. So it basically stands for record set variable. All right. So this is a variable which holds the value of all the records, set of records, right, from this object, from the account object. Because if I have to reference that anywhere, if I have to call it that, okay, I want to display all the accounts, I have to give that certain name. List of accounts should get some name, right? So I'm actually giving it a name here. Got that logic?
Right, right.
So that's what we have done here. We're just given it a name, okay? So that on the table I can call it and I can connect it with that. So since I called the object here, I
Uh,
also defined a variable which holds all the records of that object, and on the table I am just able to call that thing. Correct?
so on the table, you are calling that object, that variable, and then again naming that, giving that variable another variable name A, right?
Right. So I am calling this variable, fine, the record set var, but I am giving another variable name for this big expression. So this is my expression, right?
Is that necessary?
Yes.
Var A?
Yeah, that's necessary.
What if, what if I don't give a variable there?
It will not allow you to do that. So that's a mandatory
Okay,
attribute, and that needs to be given. Now, if you are thinking from the point of view that why is that necessary? The
You
point
would
is
not
that
be able to call the, I mean, when you're defining the column, then you would not be able to call those
you will not be
variables.
able to call, and this is something which which is a required attribute of the page block component, right? So your this
correct.
this statement always might not be this short. It sometimes it can be account dot contacts dot something. So this
Right.
var attribute is a required one, right?
Required. Okay, okay, makes sense. Okay.
And this is something which you will then call here. So instead of calling that entire big statement inside the column, we can just call the small var inside it. Correct. So this is how the connection is. So I defined my standard controller. I defined a set of accounts around that, and then I just went ahead and created my page block table. In that I have called the value and the var attribute, and then I'm calling it within the columns. All right. Okay. So time for a small activity. We will just do this thing. I want you to create a page. to display a list of all contacts, and the fields that I want to see are first name, last name, email, phone, fax, account name, and account industry, or a website. Alright, so these are the fields I want to see. I want you to create a page that can display a list of all contacts, and it should show first name, last name, email, phone, fax, account name, and website. Can we quickly do this? Do you want to see the code on my page, or you want to see the requirement, or both? Okay, let me try to accommodate both the things. Here is the requirement, and here's the code. Yep. So requirement code, both the things you can see. Let's quickly create this page for contacts. So let me create one more page for opportunities. So I'll just create the page which which can display a list of opportunities for me. Let me just go here. Timelet controller opportunity. And then what should be the next thing that we put here? One more attribute. What is missing? What one more attribute is missing here? Record
Record set.
segment. Right. Give it any name, whatever you want, and then just go ahead and create your components, page block and page block table. Okay, let me put title as list of opportunities. Then I say X page block table, and here put a value which can be same thing. Variable can be O, and you write it like apex column, whatever fields you want to bring. Let's say O dot name, amount, stage name, close date, and one more, the expected revenue. Standard controller equals opportunity. Oh, fine. O dot standard controller opportunity OPS. Oh, where is the problem here? Opportunity expected revenue spelling is incorrect. Expected. All right. Spelling needs to be corrected. That's it. So now my list of opportunities is ready, right? Now there is a problem with the standard list controller. The problem is that it can display 20 records at a time. Alright, so right now it's displaying 20 records on the page and other records are not being displayed. Alright, so for standard list controller you have a few more actions which are used for pagination. You have next, you have previous, you have first, and you have last. So these four actions can be used for pagination, basically navigating from the first page to the second page, that was, right? So you can just go ahead and create a page block, button, page block button, and in that page block buttons you can put the page command buttons. Let's say command button with a value, say next, and the action can be next. Correct. So action name itself is next. It requires a form component here, apex form component here, and end it with an apex form component. That's it. That's it. Now it shows me a next button. Next button will take me to the next pages, means the set of next 20 records. Click on this. You see it shows me other set of records. How do I go to the previous page? So create a previous button to go to the previous page. Previous. All right. Call it previous page. Call it next page. Right. So the next page, next action will take me to the next page. Previous page action will take me to the previous page, right? Here I just have two pages, so I'm able to manage things with the next and previous. Uh, if you have multiple pages, then there are two more actions, as I told you, first and last. You can use them. So first will take you to the first page, last will take you to the last page of the list. Got it? So that's something which can be easily done using our standard controller logics, or the actions. Okay, please quickly have a look onto these two actions and let me know if you find any difficulty understanding any of these.
Hey, Jeet, quick question.
Tell me.
Hello?
Yeah, tell me. Rohit, please tell me the question. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. So,
Yeah, okay, good.
let's say I want to display, you know, display any field in some other object, which are, let's say it's not a parent-child relationship. I just want to display some field from some other object. Is that possible? I can't hear you, man. Okay.
Hello. Yeah. Yes, Rohit. So I think your question was around.
Yeah,
What was
in
the
the same list, right? If I wanna show
something which is
another
not
field
related?
from another object which are not related.
Okay. How will
Let's say
you? Okay. How will you
let's
create
say
the
I wanna
connection
if
basically?
yeah, exactly, yeah.
So what will be the relationship? If there is no relationship, then what is the connect? What what value it will show, right? That's something which is very important. If I'm displaying a table, and in that table I say I would just want to display anything corresponding to an opportunity name, that it has to have some connection, some relationship, right? You got my point? What I'm trying to say? If
That
the
makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah.
And if we are talking about, are we able to display only the related object fields on the page? Uh, and can we just have one independent record on this page being displayed? The answer to that is yes, because we are still using standard controller, and standard controller cannot bring in independent data on the page, right? Independent data means something which is not related, but I can put my own logics to display that data. But
Got it.
once we get into the custom controller, we'll be able to do that. Some points we will have that kind of requirement, not maybe on this corresponding list or something like that. But we might have some of our logics. We can do that in custom controllers sometimes. But still, at the back end, we will have to put some logic, or associate some associate the records with some logic so that they can appear corresponding to each other, right? But for standard controller, not, no, not.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Okay. So that's what we will cover today. So let's keep it here for today. And tomorrow we can meet around same time. I think the 10 p.m. that works for you, right? Rohit, for tomorrow.
Yeah, yeah, 10 p.m. works, bro. Yeah.